at our regular time from next week.
Yes. And the Ministry of Labor also produced another video in collaboration with the
You see how we just get to go and ride our bikes, play in the park?
Yeah.
You went to the beach, I went to my cousins.
Uh-huh.
Those children have to work and help their parents pay for food and clothes.
Wow. So you have no childhood at all.
I know.
I cannot imagine working like a big person.
Yeah.
Wow. Wait, who is this Mr. Jones again?
You know, that guy that comes around and talks to our parents with the blue car.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
him and the other inspectors,
Uh-huh.
they go around to make sure children are going to school instead of working.
Oh.
Yeah, and the person who hires the children, they could get locked up.
Wow.
Yeah.
I never knew that. Wait, Shane.
Huh?
Oh, gosh. He's in child labor.
Shane?
Yeah.
Shane from the chess club?
Yeah.
How do you know?
Last week, Monday, I left school early. I was with Daddy, and we were passing by the grocery down the road.
Yeah.
And I saw Shane sweeping outside the grocery in his home clothes.
And what did you say? Did you talk to him?
Well, I told Dad, and Dad told me that Shane's parents are going through a hard time these days.
Oh, no.
His dad lost his job due to COVID. And it seems as though Shane will be missing a lot of school. He has to work.
Oh, no.
Wow. I felt sorry, but I didn't know about child labor. I thought it was okay for him to help out, especially since it was just for a little while.
Oh, Sheldon, Shane's parents are going to get in big trouble.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Mr. Jones told my mom the person hiring the child could get locked up.
Wow.
Especially if it's a child under 16. And they have to pay plenty money in the court if someone reports it. You know, like when we do bad things and our parents punish us.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm going to call Shane now.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Okay, talk to you. Bye. Shane, you can talk now?
Just a little, so my boss doesn't catch me.
Shane, you know Mr. Jones, the labor inspector?
I don't know.
Yes, you know him, the guy who's driving the blue car.
Yeah.
He said that your mom could get into a lot of trouble for making you work in the grocery because you are too young.
No
You have
way.
to be 16 and over to work.
That can't be right. I have to work, Sheldon. My mom can't afford to pay all these bills on her own. And it's just until my dad gets his job back. I'm just helping out.
Shane, what you're doing is against the law. Shane, I know you're trying to help out, but there must be another way to help your family. This can't be happening. You're missing out on everything. Your education, your childhood. And besides, we're losing on the chess club.
Oh.
You need to come back.
Sheldon, my mom will be so upset with me. She'll think I'm trying to get her in trouble.
No, Shane. We are only trying to work this out so it doesn't get worse than it already is.
I guess you're right, Sheldon. Thanks for looking out for me.
Okay, talk to you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hello, boys and girls. What you have just seen are two scenarios of child labor occurring right here in Trinidad and Tobago. One with a 7-year-old boy, unsupervised, selling on the beach, and another with Shane, a 14-year-old, working at a grocery to help his family because his father lost his job due to the pandemic. Now, let me tell you this. Child labor is a serious offense because it deprives you, children, of so many things that you should be able to enjoy. These things are actually your rights and include being able to socialize with your friends and family, to go out and have fun, and most importantly, to access an education. As Mr. Jones, the labor inspector, said, it is actually against the law for children below the age of 16 to be working in Trinidad and Tobago, because that is the age that children ought to be able to enjoy their childhood. It is the stage that you all should be in school to be able to learn how to become whatever you want to be when you grow up. Whether it is a mechanic, a cook, doctor, flight attendant, musician, artist, whatever it is you dream about. Even if long ago children working was the norm, it does not make it right. It is now considered illegal. As a child, you should be taken care of and not have to accept the responsibility of taking care of your family. Now, that does not mean that children cannot help out by doing harmless chores around the house. What it means is that adults should take responsibility despite the trying times to take care of their families. Things can get tough, especially within this COVID environment, but this should not lead to a child being employed below the legal age of 16. There are support services available to deal with the mental, psychological, and economic pressures of maintaining a family. Bear in mind that child labor is a punishable offense. So, just like Sheldon and Priya were looking out for their friend Shane, I would like you all to look out for each other. And if you spot child labor, tell an adult who can report it to the Labor Inspectorate Unit, Childline, or the Children's Authority. Remember, all children have rights, and you are the future of our country. I urge you, citizens, let us take care of our children and bring an end to child labor in Trinidad and Tobago.
This was a production of the Office of the Prime Minister, Communications.
So that was the feature from the Ministry of Labor talking about child labor. And since we have partnered indirectly with the ministry to provide this information, we hope you are aware and can report child labor if and when you do see it. So after the break, we will hook up with our guest, Ms. Gomez, to get into our topic this morning.
Before we go,
sexual harassment.
Right. So before we go, we again thank the Caribbean Kids and Families Therapy Organization for collaborating with the Ministry of Labor to produce this video, the video that you just saw. And again, as the gentleman said, which includes selling drugs, asking your child to sell drugs because you lost your job. So you have them on the block selling drugs or transporting drugs, construction, your partner have a garage. So you wake up your child in the morning and say, go down by Dolphus and see if you get something to do. Touting on maxi taxis. Again, too, to some of you parents who depending on your child's CCC stipend to pay rent and do what you have to do with it. Remember, that's for them. And they have financial advisors at the CCC helping them to manage that stipend. So nothing wrong with contributing a little thing at the home, but the stipend that they're getting is not yours. And remember, below 16. Below the age of 16 is child labor. Be warned, be guided. We'll take a break. When we return, Ms. Sabina Gomez.
You're listening to Eye on Dependency with Garth and Natasha. Reality radio at its best.
Parents, employers, the COVID-19 virus may have brought financial and emotional stress. Coping with these stresses can lead to making unlawful decisions, like taking a child out of school to work in order to help the family survive. It is illegal for children below age 16 to be employed in Trinidad and Tobago. Replacing a child's education with work is child labor, which is a serious offense and attracts a penalty of up to $25,000 and 6 months in prison. Do the right thing. Do not make our children victims of child labor. Visit TT Connect at www.ttconnect.gov.tt for psychological and financial support services. If you spot child labor, report it to the Labor Inspectorate Unit at 299-0300. Option 3. Childline at 131 or the Children's Authority at 996. Commemorating the International Year for the Elimination of Child Labor. A message from the Ministry of Labor.
Give me my phone.
What are you doing taking them kind of pictures? I'll tell mommy.
And I'll tell her you invaded my privacy.
Privacy? When you send those pics, you lose all privacy. It's like setting up a billboard with your naked pics for the world to see.
Those pictures are for my boyfriend's eyes only, and he'll never do that to me.
Yes, he can, or one of his friends or family. Or someone can steal his phone. Sending naked pics can open you up to embarrassment for you, your family, and friends. You can be harassed by bullies. Your pics can be uploaded to websites and seen by everybody, even the wrong people, sex offenders. It can also affect you getting a good job in the future. Once those pictures go out, you can never get them back.
Okay, I'll tell my boyfriend to delete them, and I'll delete these. I'm glad I have a smart little sister.
I'm still telling mommy.
Mava, and you listen to I on Dependency with Garth and Natasha on I 95.5 FM, Trinidad and Tobago. Don't be a fool and be a mule.
Don't be a fool and be a mule. Remember, that's another thing that's going to happen as soon as the borders are reopened. People are going to be approaching people to traffic drugs for them again. And you all need to be aware of that too, that law enforcement have also stepped up their game as well. So if you think spending 5 years in prison or 10 years in another prison
in another country
for a few dollars more because of the pressures now, well, the chance is yours, you go ahead. But just know that there are consequences, and just understand when you choose to traffic drugs to another country, you're contributing to poisoning children or people in another part of the world. That will be your contribution to society, to the world society. So think about it and be guided. So on the line, we have Ms. Sabina Gomez from the Ministry of Labor, and Ms. Sabina is?
She's the Chief Labor Inspector. Labor Relations Officer, yes, thank you. Welcome, Ms. Gomez.
Thank you. Good morning, Garth. Good morning, Natasha.
Right,
good morning to Trinidad and Tobago and all those listening.
Right, so Ms. Gomez is on the phone. You'll have to throw your voice a bit so that the listener can hear you, and our Facebook users and YouTube users as well. And we also have Ms. Alacelis de Olivero working offsite, just like Shortman. She'll be reaching out to the Venezuelan migrants who may be experiencing the same thing. And so you will be seeing, don't be alarmed, you've seen questions in Spanish on Facebook while we having a chat. So Ms. Gomez, once again, thank you. And let's dive right into it because, time flies when you're educating.
So let's start looking at the topic of sexual harassment from a global perspective. What does the International Labour Organization say about, or how does it define sexual harassment?
Well, sexual harassment, the whole issue of sexual harassment is covered under the Convention 190. And that seeks to promote the eradication of sexual harassment in the workplace. And sexual harassment, it's defined. Now we look at our definition that we have in the policy. And I think you would have covered the definition of sexual harassment in the promo, where you looked at it as anything that is a sexual in nature, verbal, whether it be verbal, covert, inverted, covert or overt behavior that seeks to, whether it's any physical, verbal, or non-verbal conduct, but it must be of a sexual nature. Anything that in the workplace persons consider unwelcome, unwanted, or unreasonable behavior. And it really affects the dignity of both men and women in the workspace. And we look at it in terms of two dimensions. You have the quid pro quo and you have the hostile working environment. I think quid pro quo, I give you something and you, in return, I get something back from you. So where the employer is asking for sexual favors in the workplace. Then you have the hostile working environment. So those are the two dimensions of sexual harassment, where the employer creates an intimidating or hostile or humiliating work environment for the employee, where the employee would have rebuffed such such advances. So in the crux of the matter, that is the how you define sexual harassment and how you look for the ingredients of sexual harassment when a complaint is made.
Okay, just 1 second. Let me just answer. Denise Wright on Facebook asked about abuse for children who. This is just on the side, Ms. Gomez, so you don't have to answer, but I think I could answer this. For children who you obviously see working with their parents, should that be considered child abuse labor and be reported? Yes. Yeah. Their parent is the employer. So yes, Denise.
Children ought not to be working or performing any kind of labor.
Right. So back to our substantive.
Right. So you spoke about those two aspects of sexual harassment, and I assume that the policy or what law or policy guides the I don't want to say enforcement. Maybe
Yes,
that's not the
there
right
is
word. Or
but there's
subject.
a national workplace policy on sexual harassment.
Okay.
This policy can be found on our website, and it really gives in detail. It covers all the dimensions of sexual, gives the definition. We even have guidance for employers, both employers and workers, in terms of responsibilities, strategies. We try to cover everything that the employer would need, tools as well. There's a form that the worker can download and fill out. If sometimes you can't articulate and put it in your own words, we advise you to go on the website, download the form, and try to write in and fill out the information as much as you could on that form. So it becomes easier, for the employee, because sometimes that's a traumatic experience you go through when you face sexual harassment. It could be very isolating as well, too, because based on who the individual is, you may find that the individual may be very popular in the workplace, and you may find arising out of the complaint of sexual harassment, you may find bullying and harassment of the worker coming about because of a complaint that was made.
Now, Ms. Gomez, if you're just joining us, you're listening to Dependency, and we're speaking with Ms. Sabina Gomez from the Ministry of Labor, the Chief Labor Relations Officer, and we're speaking to sexual harassment in the workplace. Now, Ms. Gomez, whose obligation is it to provide a safe working environment for the employee?
Well, that is the employer. That's the obligation of the employer to provide a safe working environment. But it's also a health and safety issue as well. I mean, when we deal with the other aspect of third-party harassment, someone may come into the premises and sexually harass you. It may be a client, right? So that is the role of the employer, or in the case, it could be in a school setting, it could be a university, a school setting where the student is on the premises and there's harassment from teacher, lecturer. All of that is a third-party harassment. So the role, the employer's objective really is to provide a safe working environment for the employee. And when that employee comes forward and say, look, I am fearful, I am uncomfortable, the employer should take cognizance of that, and every complaint should be taken seriously. Some people, we have heard workers come and say that, they are laughed at, or they're made, sometimes the entire staff will get together and make fun of them if they go to report it. That is why throughout the policy, you would see a common thread of confidentiality. We ask for a designated person to take the complaint, somebody that is confidential. In some organizations, you walk into HR, and before you even step out of HR, the entire organization knows what it is you came to make a complaint about. Because when you're making a complaint, it's an allegation, right? There has been no investigation. So sometimes it could be a false claim. And that's one of the things we also dealt with in the policy, because we know sometimes you may have a grievance with with a supervisor or somebody, and you make a false allegation against them, and from the time that gets out, even if the person is proven innocent, it has already gone out. And sometimes it tarnishes your reputation. Your home life could be destroyed because of a false claim that is made.
Yes,
Right?
that is very
Sometimes
true.
what we urging workers to do, you don't have to sit and suffer in silence. If something happened, then you speak up. Say something, talk to somebody. If you don't have that level of confidence to really treat with the situation according to where the person is in the organization. Sometimes it may not necessarily be a supervisor, it could be a peer, it could be somebody on the same level. It could be a man that is being sexually harassed in the workplace. And, sometimes when men are sexually harassed, everybody, will take it as a joke. And laugh about it. But it's a serious thing, and men could come forward if they don't like it, and they tell you, well, look, what your advances is unwanted. It's not welcome. Then, if they tell you to speak on the shift, then you should. Right? So the policy is not only about men harassing women, and we want to, it's not a male bashing policy, but it covers everyone. Right? Because it's not only male to female, but you have female to female, male to male. We have all these complaints coming forward. So it's not strictly men that's sexually harassing women in the workplace. So we want to make that clear.
Yes, that is true. Any person, regardless of gender or sexual orientation, can experience sexual harassment. But when we talk about the workplace, what exactly do we mean? Because the work environment does not just constitute an office.
Right. That's a very good question, because, when we speak about the workplace, we think about, your cubicle or your office space, but it could be on a after work line. There are court judgments to support that, one in particular where it's a Friday night line that happened outside the workspace, and a report was made to the employer, and it was taken up, and we have court judgments to prove that. It could be you go on a retreat, or you have a function, at the Hyatt. It could be anywhere, and something happened. You're carpooling, and advances were made in the vehicle, or somebody offered to drop you home after an after work activity. It could happen, but once it is work related, it could be outside of work. It is, all of that is considered a workplace sexual harassment.
Right. And I think that's important to highlight because, I have a personal experience that I would probably relate at some point this morning, but these things can occur outside of your office. Wherever you are doing work, it can happen. Or you are interacting with colleagues, it can happen.
Yeah. And sometimes people take the opportunity to do that. It could be a Christmas function. It could be, anything that, has a social aspect to it.
Yeah.
And they take that opportunity to probably, do what they were thinking about doing, for a while.
Yep.
Now, Ms. Gomez, so let's make this clear. So sexual harassment could be I commenting on somebody's dress. So a female colleague and say, that jeans fit nice, girl. And that thing hugging you nice. So that top hugging them headlights nice, girl. So that section that could be considered sexual harassment as well, right?
Well, it is. All of that is a form of sexual harassment. Now, if the person is offended, now some people, you may go to someone, you have that rapport with them, and that's how people communicate, and they may not be offended, and you use that same line on somebody, and they are very offended and very hurt.
Correct.
And they make a complaint on you, and you saying, well, what happened to you? That's how I communicate.
Yeah, because I could put up a defense and say, but I was just trying to be nice. How you could say I sexually harassing you and I was just complimenting how the jeans fit you.
Exactly. No, there's a judgment on that. I think I could consider it a landmark judgment. There's a Republic Bank judgment, and with that, and he said, "Well, that's how I talk to everybody. That's how I interact." So you have to be careful in the workspace as to how you would, what type of language you use, what is good communication, and maybe that is where, with the policy that we are doing, a bit of outreach. Well, we're trying to sensitize the general, all employers, all employees in terms of what could be construed to be sexual harassment, because you don't want to be caught, you know, so to speak, on the other end of being accused, right? So we are embarking on a sensitization program, and we're going to be ramping it up in a few months to come. And it's something that we would be doing on a continuous basis to have employees have a clear understanding as to what is how should I say, proper conversation. And all of that should be done with orientation, because before the legislation come into being, each employer is supposed to have their own workplace policy and probably do some intervention, or have an orientation, or just invite us to do an outreach and talk to the staff. We have been doing the different ministries, and we have been doing private sector organizations. But it's a lot of work, but we willing to go out and do the outreach to sensitize the workforce, so that when the legislation comes into being, persons will not be found wanting.
That is very important.
Really
very important outreach work, because as Garth mentioned that that example, it reminded me of an instance that happened to me while I was at work at a function with my colleagues who are all female, and this was a public function where there was an audience, and the sexual harassment came from the platform. So these were persons in high positions who were invited to speak at the event, who were commenting about, just as God said, how the three of us, the three women on the team, how we looked in our pants. And when that was reported, in my case, when I made a report to HR, it was crickets, right? Nobody responded to say, well, and I think it was because of the fact that these were men in very high positions.
And that's another problem, Ms. Gomez, that when it's reported to HR, as Natasha did, if the person who is being reported on has some measure of influence, there's a problem there, isn't it?
Well, that is where sometimes, if you, where there's supposed to be a policy in every organization in terms of how you treat with it. Now, if sometimes we have issues where the person is so high profile, that sometimes we get a call in terms of, how do we treat with this? This person is so high profile. How do we investigate it? Because you have to investigate. So then my advice to them would be to go outside and get somebody else from the outside the organization to conduct the investigation. Or if the person is the owner of the company, and then you either come to us, or you report it to a trade union and have the trade union take up the matter.
Now, can you picture this?
To the industrial court.
If you're just joining us, you're listening to Dependency, and we're speaking with Ms. Sabina Gomez for the Ministry of Labor, and we're speaking to the issue of sexual harassment in the workplace. And thank you for joining us, you, our loyal listeners and viewers. Now, Ms. Gomez, can you picture this? Okay, so Natasha dares to make a report to HR. They always, there are people in the workplace who find favor with certain individuals. Now Natasha could turn around and be the enemy of a lot of people in the organization.
Of course.
Can you picture somebody now having, after you open that gate by making that report, and it gets around to the different floors in the building, that Natasha just reported the boss for sexual harassment. could you understand the both sides of what will be happening to that individual after that report is made and the word gets out? It will be an uncomfortable environment for that person going to work from that day on. So there's some mental issues, and now will be involved with this person now having to feel like a weight on their shoulder every time they walk into work.
Well, this is why the organization should have a policy to how to treat
Yes.
with these things. Yeah.
Now, we also looked at psychosocial support in the policy.
Right.
Now, that's a very real issue
Yes.
that you mentioned, because I think I touched on it earlier. When you go and you make a report against this person, and this person may be somebody that is very popular within the organization, a person described to me what happened to her. She was bullied. She was harassed by both male and female persons as to why she went and complained.
Yes.
So the harassment and the bullying is real. So she was literally tormented on the job by both men and women.
Right.
Right. So that is something that is very real, because you'll be sexually harassed, and then you'll be harassed and bullied for coming forward.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what about?
And that is a very real scenario.
Yes. And what do you recommend, or what does the policy guide as far as the individual who is being harassed confronting the person who's doing the harassing? Because that was a recommendation made to me. Someone senior to me who was there at the event asked me if I wanted to confront the individual who made the comment, and I said no. I don't think it's in my place to do that. But what would you recommend?
Well, facing the individual is one school of thought, but then the other school of thought is that you write a complaint exactly what happened and what did the person do and how you felt, and ask for the matter to be investigated.
Yep.
You can do that. If you don't want to face, because sometimes even to admit that it happened to you, that can be very traumatic in itself, because some people they're so, when it happened, they probably go through their mind as to why it happened. What did I do? Did I do something to make it happen? Was it my fault? So, and that is something that we have to be mindful of. Sometimes it happens to you and you have to internalize it, work it out in your mind. So sometimes it's not something that persons come forward immediately and talk about. Some people don't talk about it. I had someone, she wrote me like about 10 pages. And it happened years ago, and she finally decided to come out. And, the employer said, when I contacted the employer, he said, well, he didn't know this was going on. And it was happening for years, and she didn't say anything because she didn't want to disclose it to her husband, because, she's afraid what he would do. And when the gentleman was, finally confronted, I think he left.
Wow.
So sometimes it's very difficult to make somebody come and confront somebody when, you trying to wrap it around in your head, what happened, why it happened, because you may be feeling in a kind of way, that, sometimes we face with workers would come in and sometimes they're very depressed,
yes.
Because they're made fun of when they come and they make a complaint, and you see the harassment on their face, like, the person could do whatever and get away scot-free with it.
And then,
according to the type of environment that you're working in.
And then some people will be quick to point out, well, look how she's dressed. What she expect. You're always wearing tight clothes and always pushing up your chest, and so she looked for that.
Yeah, but I think orientation and outreach sessions are really good to really, the contents of the policy, and also to get feedback from the workers. Because I think in order for change to occur, you must have discussions in the workplace, what is appropriate behavior. Say somebody dressed in a particular manner, that doesn't give you the right to either abuse them, to sexually harass them. It doesn't give you the right, because that in itself is not proper behavior to sexually harass somebody. So it shouldn't matter how the person dressed.
Correct.
Right? Yes, there should be attire that workplace attire, but that still doesn't give the individual the right to do that.
Right. Thank you. If you're just joining us, you're listening to Dependency, and we are speaking with Ms. Sabina Gomez of the Ministry of Labor, and we're speaking to sexual harassment in the workplace. If you have ever been or know someone and you're going through that right now, then you need to listen and follow some of the advice that you're hearing here this morning.
Well, let's talk about now. I mean, we've covered a few of them, but what are the impacts of sexual harassment to the worker, to the employer, and to the society as a whole?
Sometimes, you're looking at litigation. You're looking at publicized litigation. Sometimes it appears in newspapers. When that appears, if the employer didn't treat with it properly, it becomes publicized litigation. It has impact on your career and your reputation. Sometimes relationships in the organizations are broken, not only in the organizations, but within the home as well. You have the organization climate will shift. People wonder, is this a good place where I can go to, because they know this particular gentleman, he's a well-known harasser. So all of these are the effects of the outcome of sexual harassment. It becomes a topic for discussion. Sometimes, lives are ruined because of that. Organizations, their brand is affected because of that. And it's really sometimes a bottom line issue, because when you have to pay out large sums of money in compensation, all of that is the effects of having, not having a clear policy guideline, a clear, how should I say, create that environment, because it stems from the top. So sometimes if you don't have buy-in from your CEO and your managing director as to what type of organization we would like to have in terms of the culture of the organization, you would find things like these happening. If there's a zero tolerance, because coming out with the policy, the government is saying there should be a zero tolerance to sexual harassment in the workplace across the board. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter large, small, medium. It doesn't matter. Zero tolerance across the board. Then if the head of your organization take that position that there's zero tolerance in my organization, it must be filtered down. So new workers coming in, when they're being oriented, they would know that there's a sexual harassment policy. Maybe that could be an interview question that they ask, so they make it known to them that, hey, this is important. This is the culture that we have in this organization.
No, Ms. Gomez, sorry.
No, I wanted to respond anyway, so you go ahead first.
Okay. Have the Ministry of Labor ever reached out as well, extend this policy to all arms of the protective service?
That's where I was going.
I'm glad you're coming.
That's where I was going.
I'm glad you're coming. I'm glad you raised that, because actually we have been in discussion with the Office of the Prime Minister. Well, the Office of the Prime Minister, in coming up with the policy, Minister Yana Webster Roy and a team, they sat with us, because the Office of the Prime Minister, they had a policy in place already. And when we were drafting the policy, we met with them and we incorporated some of what they have in the policy, because we really liked it, into the national policy. And P.F. Johnson, we have been liaising with her in terms of having outreach session with the protective services and the organizations under the auspices of the Office of the Prime Minister, which is the Defense Force and other state entities. So yes, we do. And what we are going to do with that particular session is incorporate the gender policy with the National Workplace Policy on Sexual Harassment, because you can't discuss sexual harassment without looking at gender, the whole gender aspect, masculinity, how males are oriented, especially in the protective services. So we really we are going to be doing that, and that is something that's on our agenda.
Excellent. I was actually just gonna ask that in terms of
Yeah, it is
workspaces where
on our agenda.
there's a gender imbalance, or there are many
Yes.
more men than women, or the reverse.
Yes.
Because there are stories that we've gotten and heard about that, and it's a scarier place because
Yeah.
the repercussions could be very, very detrimental in some cases. And
Yes.
with regard to promotion and all these different things. And then there are the men who feel that women are there for their taking when they
For
feel
their
like.
amusement, yeah.
Yes, we are aware, and that is, we are in, discussion, because we want to formulate a special. It wouldn't be the normal outreach that we would do, because we have to incorporate the gender policy, and yes, we that is on our mandate. COVID kind of threw us off a little bit in terms of the plans we have to continue, because we have a lot of requests that we have to fulfill. And we started with the government ministries. We did the CPEP contractors. So we have been working on, we did a lot of organizations who would just call us and ask us for outreach. So we want to cover a lot of ground in terms of getting the message out, getting the word out before the legislation comes on board.
All right. Now, before we go to that break, Mr. Landy wanted to find out, and I think you spoke to that, but we'll bring it up, ask you before we take the break. In with regard to as Mr. Landy put the question, though, can this be used to set up, frame an individual? I know probably Mr. Landy joined us late when you spoke with that, but she drew reference to the Black Wall Street destruction of Oklahoma back then, a simple accusation of sexual harassment.
That's a little different situation
I know,
in terms of race,
yeah,
but
false accusations could be leveled against somebody for whatever reason, right? I mean, people would do it, right? So we put in a policy because we expect somebody, and there has to be a strong deterrent, within the legislation to prevent persons from doing this. It has to be so strong that even if you think about it, you wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah. And that's where a strong and very well worded policy comes into effect. And the process of investigation will obviously root out any false claims or accusations that people may make.
All right. So after we return from the break, Alacelis has a question. How do you know when it's sexual harassment? And how do you...
In a culture where everything or these kinds of advances are permissible, because we do live in a culture where it is acceptable for men to address women in a certain way, and vice versa.
Like, for instance, the person working in a bar, a nightclub, a restaurant, this part of society where, some people wear skimpy clothes when they're working, and it's okay for a man to pinch the bottom. Is that sexual harassment? Or you in the environment, and you ought to take that. So we'll respond to that after this break. We'll be back.
Okay.
This is reality radio at its best. Eye on Dependency on I-95.5 FM.
Welcome back. Today we're dealing with sexual harassment in the workplace. And joining us is Valerie Vaughn, author of the Trinity Times bestseller, When the Paycheck Becomes the Paycheck. Hi, Valerie. So let's get into this. Some people feel that sexual harassment in the workplace is a misunderstanding, but actually it's a real thing.
Oh yes, it is very real, especially in Trinidad and Tobago.
Audience, in a nutshell, sexual harassment is any unwanted sexual advances or obscene remarks made at the workplace.
And as a victim of sexual harassment, I can tell you that it is difficult. I wish I knew my rights earlier. And that's why I wrote this book. I would like your audience to know that it can happen to men too.
Now, Val, I know that we talked about how to treat with sexual harassment, but I want my audience to hear it from you. Should they face a situation of this kind?
Well, the first thing you need to do is object. Report it to your supervisor, Take notes of the event, exact details, dates, times, locations, even witnesses. Make a complaint in writing and follow up so the matter can be dealt with as quickly as possible.
Val, I could not have put it better. Thank you for being here. And for those of you who want more advice, come chat with Val after this episode of the Laborville Show, where your matter matters. See you soon.
If you or someone you know needs advice on a workplace issue, contact the Conciliation Unit. A message from the Ministry of Labor and Small Enterprise Development.
Slavery, a terrible time in our history. The kidnapping, buying and selling of people for profit, the exploitation of another human being. It still exists today. It has a new name: human trafficking. Anyone can be a victim. There is forced labor, sexual exploitation, and domestic servitude. Human trafficking is a worldwide problem and an emerging concern for us here in Trinidad and Tobago. If you know of or suspect human trafficking activity, call the Counter-Trafficking Hotline at 800-4CTU or 800-4288. Human trafficking is a crime. Identify it, report it, stop it. A message from the Counter-Trafficking Unit of the Ministry of National Security.
Hello, my name is Raquel, a trainee inmate at HMP Drake Hall, Staffordshire, England, and you're listening to Iron Dependency with Garth and Natasha. Please, people, don't traffic drugs. The money is all that nice. It's not worth it.
Thank you for staying with us. You're listening to Independency. Natasha, this is a very important.
Yes, and it's something that we need to continue discussing because it can be taboo, it can be difficult to talk about and to address, but that's why we are having this conversation this morning.
And there are actually people who will be upset.
Yes.
For us having a conversation like this, you know.
Yeah.
You know, because as one listener sent a message in that female bosses and workers also taunt men. Right. So how does a man, as Alacelis ask, you know, how do you know when it's sexual? Okay, for instance, there's this female employee who maybe she might be new or whatever, new or old, and have a habit of going and leaning up on her chair and pretending to help her work with it on the computer, or, you know, rubbing up on the person under the guise of wanting to ask a question. But no, I could defend that. But so how do you know when it's sexual harassment? And especially coming from a female.
You must know how you feel.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yes, Ms. Gomez.
Yes, so, you know, you look at the ingredients to see whether sexual harassment exists or not, you know, and that is where, you know, having a formal complaint mechanism is there where the person can come forward and say exactly what happened. So you can look for elements of sexual harassment in terms of quid pro quo or hostile working environment. But then again, what the court looked at is how did it make you feel? Because sometimes when somebody tells you something, it come like you shrink in front of the person. You feel very small. You get depressed inside. And that is one of the things that the court looked at. How did it make you feel when this was said? And I think that is a very important ingredient.
It is.
You know, how did it make you feel?
And that
like
that
someone
process
will come,
mm-hmm.
you know, in the workplace, you have people who are touchy-feely. They like to touch. They will touch everybody. And it might be quite acceptable. Some people may think nothing of it, and then they go and they touch another person, and that person gets offended. And the person will tell you, I am greatly offended. Why did you touch me?
Right.
And you will say, but what's she playing? You know, he don't mean anything by it. But you feel differently when that person touch you.
Yeah.
No, I have two other questions with regard to sex workers and female bosses. Now, some people might come down on me for reporting a female boss for sexual harassment. How do, as a man, do I have the same cover as a female? Yeah, well, I'm asking for those who just asked the question.
Of
You know,
course,
right?
because it should not be acceptable in the workplace, whether it's male, whether it's female. Because we did have someone, his mother, I think his mother brought him because he was being sexually harassed by a female on the job, by the female boss, right? So it is not acceptable, right? So men need to come forward. It's nothing to be ashamed about. It's just unacceptable behavior in the workplace. And, women must hold to be the same standard as you would hold a man.
Now, are sex workers protected under this as well?
Well, as long as you're a worker in Trinidad and Tobago and you identified as a worker, now when you say sex worker, is sex work legal in Trinidad and Tobago?
There you go.
It's not exactly so.
Yeah.
So if you once you are a worker, well, actually this this policy goes beyond worker, because under the Industrial Relations Act there's a specific definition of worker, but this policy goes beyond that. It extends to employee. So there are certain persons who may not be covered under the IRA because they may not be considered workers under the Act. But this policy really covers everyone.
So okay.
And even migrant workers, we make mention of migrant workers in the policy.
Right.
And one of the things that we do, we have been conducting outreach sessions with the Living Water community. We had 2 last year and we had 1 this year. I think it's in May. Right. Recently we had 1, and we normally would have different sessions where we would do it online, and that would be done like after 6 in the evening or something like that. We'll do the session with the migrant workers. So they too are covered. And if there's a complaint, they need to feel empowered to come and make that complaint. They are free to join any trade union of their choice and pick up a matter.
Now, if they want, you have some emails that you can share before we forget. There are some emails that you can share with the public that they can send an email to, especially for migrant workers as well.
Yes, if it's a case of sexual harassment, the email address is shcaad@gov.tt.
So S as in Sierra, F as in Foxtrot.
S as in sexual.
Right.
Oh.
So
H as in harassment.
Right. So Sierra
CAD
Hotel.
as in Conciliation Advisory and Advocacy Division. So it's shcaad
right.
@gov.tt.
Right.
That email is specifically for sexual harassment issues.
Right.
And there's another one.
And the other one for any issue employer-employee related is conciliation.mol@gov.tt.
Conciliation.
Right. You'll put this in the
chat. mol@gov.tt.
Right. So we'll put this in the chat and let people.
Right. So once you have a complaint you want to suggest, just make sure that you put a telephone number because we will contact you via telephone.
No, we had a question in the chat, Ms. Gomez, and Alison asked if the law pertains to outside of the workplace as well. But just I don't know if she means the outside of the office space. So I'll just reiterate that any work environment, this can happen
after work line,
inside or outside the workplace at a work-related social function, in the course of work assignments outside of the workplace, at work-related conferences, studies, or training sessions, during work-related travel, unwelcome sexual advances or verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature which has the purpose or effect of unreasonably interfering with the individual's work performance or creating an intimidating, hostile, abusive, or offensive working environment.
Yes.
So that covers a lot.
Yes. Yes.
No,
Someone told me we had a complaint where the person offered to drop them home, and on their way home, they made advances to them.
Right.
And they rebuffed the advances. And when they came out to work the next day, it was hostility.
Yes.
Of course.
The person was verbally abused, shouted at in front of members of the public. You know, it was really, really bad treatment, right? Because, you know, you probably want the person to resign and leave the job, right? And that's because so they will give you work that you cannot do, deadlines that you cannot meet. And all of these things they will do to you because they want you to, they'll make life unbearable
Yes.
for you so that you will just pick up and leave the
And
job.
leave. Yeah.
You know, that's an interesting thing that you just mentioned. I remember in my case when the incident happened to me, we were on site at a different location in rural Trinidad. And we had parked at our workplace and drove down in one car with a senior manager in the organization. And after the event, one of the counselors for the area was having a shindig at his house. And even though the three of us, the three women in the department, said we are ready to we're ready to go home. Just can we go back to the office? We were essentially kidnapped because the senior manager decided he wanted to go to the function because the senior officials were going there as well. So we had to traipse along behind him, go to this man's house, eat roti and whatever. And we ended up back in the office after 10 o'clock in the night.
Wow.
And there was nothing, you know, we had no choice. We were basically kidnapped, I would say. And even after, you know, reporting that to HR as well as what happened earlier on in the evening, you know, no recourse. I mean, I know that's not sexual harassment in what we're describing here, but you know,
but it is abusive behavior.
It's abuse of authority.
And no one
Of
should
course.
feel, and no one should feel that helpless in a workplace.
Yeah, because we
Right?
really
No
had
one
no
should feel
choice.
that
We were
way.
in the middle of nowhere, and we had no way of getting back to the office.
Now, two questions quickly. One, the Alice asks about the if the Venezuelan migrants can send their complaint in Spanish. Would that
Sure.
be yeah?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And now how the ministry planning to reach out to other migrants because not all of them are affiliated with the Living Waters community.
All right. Well, if there are any groups, because we prefer if we're going to have a talk to them about basic industrial relations, anything concerning work-related issues that they may have, inclusive of sexual harassment, we would like to treat with them as a group. So if there are any organizations, any NGOs that they are affiliated with, and they want to approach us, we will be very willing to do an outreach session for them at any time convenient to them.
Okay. So now the before we switch gears a bit, because we just wanted to ask one question on the vaccine and the Ministry of Labor's position on it. But back to the workers, you know, it's kind of out there. Well, as I said, there are people working in bars and casinos, nightclubs, and all everything. You all have reached out to these folks as well to extend this, make them aware of this policy. Yes.
Not as yet, but we will. We eventually have to get around to the entire workforce in Trinidad and Tobago. And so we have a little kind of limitation in terms of how we are working now, but eventually we will get around to it. Sometimes they reach out to us, or sometimes based on complaints that we would have gotten, we reach out to them and ask them if they, would like us to come in, talk to their supervisors, talk to their staff, about what, or sometimes, in terms of some organizations, in terms of them, they may have an issue, but they don't want to target a specific person, so they will organize the session around certain people, you know. So they will, you know, have to put other people in, but they really have a targeted group that they want to really address or they want to speak with because of, you know, what is taking place in the workspace. And because, you know, we have been getting some really bizarre cases, you know, that
Yeah,
really
you know,
needs to be addressed.
it's really
But
unfortunate. Sorry, go ahead, Ms. Gomez.
no, but we just want. I know time is of the essence, but I just want to, you know, just advise employers. You can reach out to us for sessions. We do it virtually with your workers because you have to know what's in the policy. You have to. Your workers have to be aware. If there's a change that needs to take place in the organization, then you need to start it, incorporate it in your orientation sessions. We ask that where they are recognized majority unions, that the trade unions and the employers incorporate that into their collective agreement to make it part of their collective agreement and not just have and say, okay, we have a policy, but to place it in your collective agreement, right? All national policies should then be part of your terms and conditions of employment because we also have the HIV/AIDS national policy, and that should also be included as well. So, and we always, you know, urge persons to have discussions. There is the national policies. Now, some of the trade unions are already way ahead of the curve in terms of having it incorporated and make it a part of the collective agreement. And we applaud them for that. But it's to really look at the national policy and see where further changes could be made to be in line with the national policy, right? So
Yes.
employers, workers, please don't suffer in silence. You know, you need to really come out and make the complaint, you know, have the matter addressed, because if somebody don't come forward and say, workers will then suffer in silence.
No.
Productivity will decrease.
Now, before Natasha asks a question, can employers as well will be held responsible? Employers be held responsible for ignoring once the policies are in place? Can employers now can be held responsible for ignoring the complaints of an employee?
Most definitely.
Right. Yes, the most important.
They will be held liable.
Yes.
Because that's part of their function. Once the worker come forward and make a claim, the employer has to properly investigate it. And if it's such a serious claim that one needs to be taken off the premises, or, you know, now if the case has been investigated and it's of such a nature that the management can decide who can work from home and send that individual at home to be out of the work situation while the investigation is being conducted.
Yeah.
Right? The worker must be made aware if an investigation is being conducted as to how it's being conducted, because sometimes you make a complaint and you never hear
anything. Yes.
Anything until they may tell you, well, you know, we did an investigation and the person was found not to be culpable. And that's it.
Oh,
So
you
you are
are
left
that.
feeling dejected, unsatisfied. You were not a part of the process.
Yeah.
And, you know, so it is imperative that, you know, we try to reach as many employers as possible, but they can also contact us. You can call us at 299-0300 extension 2043 if you want us to come in and do an outreach, or if you want us to do it virtually. We can do it virtually. Just call that number, or you can email us and send us your request. We can check our website, and you can see all our suite of services that we offer.
Right, time is flying so fast here. And we hope we could take a couple calls if we have the time. But Ms. Gomez, you had one more because I wanted to talk on the vaccine.
No, just very quickly, remind us of what steps you should take if you are a worker and you've been sexually harassed.
All right, the first thing you need to do is to record it. All right, there must be a designated person in the workplace, and you need to record the date, the time, and the facts. When did it happen? If there were any witnesses, you know, So you need to record it, and that person must be a designated person, must be identified by the organization. The worker must know about the grievance procedure. There must be a formal complaint mechanism, right? Where the worker would feel safe going to that person and lodging the complaint, right? The person carrying out the interview, the investigation, interview the victim and the alleged harasser separately, right? Interview other relevant parties who are around, who were privy to what was taking place, and then you have to decide whether or not an incident of sexual harassment took place. A report must be produced detailing the investigation findings and other recommendations, right? Because that could be a reason for having training, for having orientation, or setting up a change management team to change the culture of the organization. So all these things could come about from an investigation, right? And we really want to foster a non-adversarial, confidential approach, right? So we want to train employers and workers on sexual harassment. Those are some of the strategies that we want to employ as a ministry, to assist with the establishment of customized workplace policies for each organization and with guidelines for in-house resolution. Psychosocial support by employers to victims, and especially persons falsely accused, and observers when necessary. Because sometimes the observer may be just as traumatized as the person who is experiencing the harassment. So sometimes some of these things, we spoke about removal of one person from off the job and letting them work at home. Things can happen if the person, sometimes the person was demoted because they refuse to acquiesce to the harassment.
Yes.
Sometimes they suffer from lack of training. So when promotion comes, they are denied promotion.
Yes.
Sometimes they are transferred or reassigned to far places, right? Or suspended. They came to make the complaint, and they are the ones who end up being
Victimized.
disciplined.
Yeah.
So these are all the things all the ingredients that we experience from having, face-to-face discussions or having discussions with persons who are sexually harassed in the workplace.
It's so unfortunate we have to even be discussing this, but as I say,
No,
it's a worldwide
important.
phenomenon.
It's important that we keep it on the national agenda and we don't, we don't hide it. It has to be
Yes.
discussed openly, because the number of persons experiencing and the numbers that we see in terms of the complaints, we know that they are like persons, they don't really come forward. They may be afraid to come forward, or sometimes they suffer in silence. So we want to say, come forward.
Come forward. Yes. So, Ms. Gomez, before we wrap up, is the Ministry of Labor ready to deal with or have any position on workers, employers who will demand their workers be vaccinated before they return to work? And did the ministry have a position on this as yet?
The ministry, we don't have an official position just as yet, but one will be coming soon.
Right.
But we have been getting complaints. I mean, it's on the national agenda, so I cannot not say anything about it. We have been, employers have approached us as well as workers. And like I said, let me put it this way. You don't want to get to that space where you are forcing someone to do something. Each person, and the Prime Minister was very clear in his statement that he made yesterday, right? Each person, they will have their own individual rights. But what I can say is that we are willing to work with employers, and we are willing to, collaborate with the Ministry of Health. If an employer approaches us and say, look, this is a difficulty I'm having, he would explain. We say, okay, would you mind us having a chat with your workers? Of course, in collaboration with the Ministry of Health, we seek their guidance. And maybe we don't want employers to come down on workers and say, okay, don't come out to work because if you're not vaccinated. No, what are the alternatives? Let's have a discussion. If you having an issue, and then sometimes maybe if you approach, how did you approach your worker? Because sometimes you lack of respect as well too. Yeah. If you come and you say, if don't take vaccine, you're not coming out to work.
Don't bother to come back.
Don't bother to come back. No, that is how we approach a situation. Sometimes employers out there may be causing more harm in terms of how they treat with workers with you. Right. So we're saying, look, one employer came with us on Friday, he spoke to us. His case was very compelling, and we said, look, would you mind if we have a virtual meeting with your workers? We contacted the Ministry of Health to get their guidance and stuff, and say, would you mind if we have a discussion with them, find out from them, okay, what their issues, and see if we can treat with them. I believe dialogue and having the right information, is critical, and we should not go to the jugular, as employers, right? It's still early days yet. We mandatory vaccination. It's still too early for that.
All right. Well, we
right?
will.
There are some critical areas in terms of where you consider essential, where you have to interface with the public, elderly care, where you're treating with elderly residents. All these are issues that we are mindful of. But let's work together, let's dialogue. And the more information you have, workers will be better to make an informed decision. Right? Sometimes it will, at the end of the day, it will become necessary. If you have to travel, leave the country, you have to be vaccinated. So rather than going to the jugular, let's sit and discuss and see if one by one we can, have the country back on track, back to normal. Productivity will increase. We have demonstrated that, we can work from home, we can be equally as productive. I mean, businesses that were closed down, I know they're anxious to get back on track, to, have the economy flowing, and we will do whatever we can to support.
All right, so folks, we're coming to the end of our program this morning. We could take a quick call too if you have any questions from Ms. Gomez or any comment to make. Just remember that from next Sunday, so you can call us at 622-3937, 622-3937. Next Sunday, God willing, we'll be back to our regular scheduled time from 6:15 p.m. Because we have lots. We'll be hosting the Minister of National Security, and following which we'll have the director of the counter trafficking unit, and we'll be releasing a documentary called Maria. That's something that you need to see. It's about a Venezuelan migrant who came here on her own, but she ended up in the wrong hands. So I'll leave it at that. Then it should be the start of our Dependency TV series as well on TV6, Iron Health. So we're going to have that launch on the 25th. Then we have the youth program, the CCC. There's a spoken word competition on human trafficking that they're involved in right now at MyLat, and we'll have that unveiled when Ms. Wheeler is here with the results the following weekend. And then we touch Serval, the beginning. We concentrate on the youth for a while, and so because there's a history of Serval that you all don't know. And then we go to the regiment. Everybody was really happy with that program we had with the ladies of the regiment. So we touch on that, and then we'll have present serving members of the regiment. So we have a lot coming up. So folks, we'll be back at 6:15 p.m. next Sunday. Good morning. Hello, good morning.
Hey, God. Morning.
Morning.
I wanted to ask which is the section in the IRA, if it could be told specifically, that defines the worker, and if maybe the lady could explain what it says or read it out first. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Gomez, you heard that question?
Sorry, no, I didn't hear that question.
He was asking about the Industrial Relations Act and how it defines a worker.
All right. If he's asking me that question, then he knows the answer to that. So he's very with the Industrial Relations Act.
Right.
We have another call.
Is that some information people can find on your website?
Most definitely.
Okay.
Hello? The Industrial Relations Act.
Hold on, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Go ahead, caller.
Hello, good morning again, and good morning to the guest.
Morning.
I would like to find out, let's say a matter go to court. Is it always about monetary, or does the judge or say magistrate encourage the person to go and do counseling? Because to me, I find it doesn't going to be about money, probably the person itself need help or some kind of assistance. Thank you.
Thanks for that question. You heard that, Ms.
Well,
Gomez?
well, that sort of support is done before the matter reaches the court, because sometimes you may have an issue that will require EAP, and that is where that comes in. We spoke about psychosocial support. So it doesn't have to reach the court. Well, the court may ask the employer, if it reaches to the industrial court, the court may ask the employer, did you offer the worker any employee assistance? Any did you send the worker? Do you have an employee assistance program? So that is also, if the matter comes to the ministry in conciliation, that is, and we hear the particular type of issue, and there's a social or psychosocial aspect to it, we may ask we will most definitely ask the employer, did you try this method? So before it reaches to that stage, that question is also put to the employer.
But in most instances, when it does go to court, there is some measure of compensation involved, yes?
Yes. Well, it could either be compensation, or the union may ask for the worker to be reinstated,
right,
or reemployed, whichever one is suit the type of dispute it is. So that is also put on the table. So it's not only compensation,
right?
But more than likely, 95% of the time it will be compensation, or not all matters that go to the court are dismissals. It may be some other issue that will go to the court.
622-3937. Good morning.
Hi, morning. Question. Are they thinking of developing a sexual harassment law? I'm asking because there's a national policy on persons with disabilities, and it's still policy after almost 30 years. So whether there's going to be a law at some place done.
All right.
Okay, good
Thank you for
question.
that.
Yes, well, that solely lies within the Office of the Attorney General. So we are awaiting, his time, and I know his agenda is very busy, so we are waiting. There is a draft that is out, so we are waiting the Attorney General.
Okay. Well, Ms. Gomez, we want to thank you so much for your time this morning, as usual. Well articulated. I'm sure that those who listened and joined us will, of course, be guided accordingly. And the information again that we will share with our audience before we wrap
Right. Our email address, if you have any work-related issue, send us conciliation.mol@gov.tt with a valid telephone number, and we will get in contact with you. If it's a matter of sexual harassment and you need advice, SHCAAD. If you wish to call us, 299-0300 extension 2043, and you can check on our website. Employers, if you would like us to come in and chat with your workers, we can do it virtually, using any platform you so require. We can do that. So just reach out to us, email us, and ask us, and we would do it. We have other customized services that we offer, and it's on our website, so you can feel free to get in contact with us and email us.
Yes, and the website is labor.gov.tt, yes?
Yes.
All right.
Ms. Gomez, thank you once again. You and the folks at the Ministry of Labor, keep up the good work. You all,
Yes, and
God
I'd
bless
like to
you
say
all.
good morning to my minister and my permanent secretaries, Ms. Natalie Willis and Ms. Kiva Williams.
Yes, Ms. Natalie Willis.
That's reminding us.
Yes. It's
And
a
to the
pleasure.
staff of the conciliation unit, a very happy Sunday and good morning to them. And
Yes,
to all Trinidad and Tobago listening, and those on the worldwide web.
Yes, ma'am. God bless you all. Take care.
Thank you.
Keep up the great work, all right?
Bye.
We'll be in touch. And folks, once again, you have the numbers 299-0300 extension 2043. You go to labor.gov.tt if you want any information. Sexual harassment is SH or Sierra or some say Sam. So Sam Hotel Charlie Alpha Delta. at gov.tt. All right. So, and of course, conciliation.ministry Ministry of Labor.
MOL.
Conciliation, is that there?
Yes.
Right. MOL at gov.tt. Folks, thank you very much. Once again, Timal and all the group, our loyal followers, thank you so much. Well, we announcing once again that we'll be back at our regular scheduled time, 6:15 p.m. next Sunday, God's willing. And we'll have the Minister of National Security in. And we have the Coast Guard assets, people. So you'll get a chance to see that and hear about the ministry plans going forward, which will also launch the week coming up of World Day Against Trafficking in Persons. There are a number of activities to take place during that week.
Just the
leading
30th
up,
of July, yeah.
Yes, leading up to Miss Wheeler being a guest as the director of the counter trafficking unit to speak to that issue on that day, on the 25th. We're really looking forward to that because we have a very, very compelling, interesting documentary entitled Maria.
Yes.
You don't want to miss that. All right.
Great.
So join us at 6:15 p.m. next Sunday, God's willing, for another edition of Our Dependency right here on 95.5 FM. Major news at 12 up next.
This is